Hi, this is Kat with Beadaholique, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make the Loom statement earrings. Now these are an exclusive Beadaholique kit that you can only get at beadaholique.com. So I'm going to start by showing you guys the beautiful patterns that we have for these statement Loom earring kits. So if I can just draw your eyes up here, these are how lovely they are. Now you can kind of just see from my hand how large these are, so these are definitely going to be some statement pieces. But we're doing a nice little loomed piece here with some ribbon slide ends. And then to top it all off, or I should say to bottom it all off, we're adding a beautiful Swarovski crystal just to add a little flash. So this is the one we're going to be making today. This is the Ibiza version. We also have a beautiful sort of wine and olive with a lovely golden shadow down there, and that's going to be our Tuscany. We have a Bristol, which is going to be a really beautiful sort of almost like a sweater pattern in a pink, white, and sort of a gunmetal there. And then we also have our last version here, and this is the Helsinki. So a very nice traditional one. We just added a little crystal to the bottom just to give a nice little pop to the silver, black, and white. So we have 2 gold and 2 silver there for you. But when you purchase a kit from Beadaholique, I just want to show you exactly what you're going to get. So for this kit, you're going to get the baby jewel loom, which is perfect for creating these statement earrings. You're going to get a set of needles. You're going to get your coordinating color of beads, of course. And then for your findings, you're going to get your head pins and eye pins, your slide ends. You're also going to get your earring hooks, and then we have your crystals down here as well. So you'll get 6 of those little bicones and 2 of the Swarovski crystal Baroque beads. You'll also get your Nymo thread and a tube of E6000. Now what you'll need to provide yourself is, I'm going to be using some toothpicks here to help me with that glue, but you can also just use a scrap of wire. And then I have a pad of sticky notes here, and you're going to see how I'm going to utilize that a little bit later, but you can also use Scotch tape for what I'm about to show you in a little bit. And then I have some flush cutters, a pair of round nose pliers, and a pair of chain nose pliers. And you'll also need a pair of snips or cutters, or of course you can just use a pair of scissors as well. Now I'm going to be using a ruler to help me with mine today. And then the other thing that you're going to get when you purchase the kit is these lovely patterns. So for your particular one that you're going to get, this is the one we're going to do today. It's a nice, large, easy to read pattern that is nice and in color for the kit earrings. So you'll get your coordinated pattern, so you can just kind of see how that'll look on the page there, nice and easy to follow along with. So if you have everything ready to complete your Loom statement earring kit, we are ready to begin. All right, so let me first start by showing you the baby jewel loom. Now this is a shortened loom here, and it is of course baby, so it's a little wee, so I'm just going to take it out of my packaging here. It does come with a full instructional booklet to help you set up your loom, but I'm going to show you how to do it for our purposes here today, but this is also just a great little added value. So I'm going to go ahead and set that guy aside. And I just want to show you the difference in size. So this is the regular jewel loom, and this is the baby jewel loom. So it's about half the size, which makes it perfect for doing our earrings. Now, if you already have the jewel loom, you can do this earring as well. And what I want to kind of tell you is that we do also here at Beadaholique offer refill kits. Now with your refill kit, you won't get the loom, the needles, and the glue. You'll get everything else here that I showed you in the beginning, but you won't get those 3 items. So if you already have those, if you have the jewel loom, you can still complete this project. I will say though, you'll see how our earring is going to kind of mock up and it's going to sit in the center here. You can do it on the jewel loom, but I still wouldn't recommend trying to do 2 at a time. I know that might be a question some of you might have. I still recommend only doing 1. The ideal reason to use the baby jewel loom is 1, it's nice and compact, and 2, you won't be using as much thread. So you'll have a little bit more Nymo left over at the end. So you'll kind of see as we work how that's all going to kind of come together. All right, so I have my baby jewel loom here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to set up my jewel loom. Let's just dive right in. So what I need to do is find the end of my Nymo here. And let's see, get a little bit off of there. And I'm just going to loop it around one of my pegs in the back. And I'm going to tie just 1 overhand knot just to secure it to the peg there. And then I'm just going to do another overhand knot. There we go. All right, so I'm just going to kind of wind that around a few times with my tail. All right, so now I'm just going to kind of hold on to it. So what you can see is now what I'm going to do is I have my little tail here. I'm just going to hold it with my finger there, and I'm going to guide it over to one of the pegs there and just kind of bring it up and over the top. Now what's really nice about the jewel loom is that you have all these little notches here to help keep your warp threads sort of separated. Now you don't need to get it exact, as long as you kind of keep following the pattern here, you should be fine. So I just go directly across, and wherever it seems to notches is fine by me. So I'm going to notch it there. Now flipping it over, I'm going to wind it around and pull it up so that we go over the next one there. This is a little hard to show, but I'll kind of go slow. All right, so I've wound it around, and now I'm going to go up into that second notch there and bring it across all the way. So you see how I just follow the second little notch there? And then again, just go around the peg, just like so, and bring it around and do the third one. And I am right-handed, so I gotta switch hands there. All right, so there we go. And just loop it around. And coming back over. And our pattern here is 15 beads wide, which means we need 16 warp threads. So just keep going until you've built up all 16. And then I'll show you how to tie it off there. And what's nice is you can just see that the spool of thread has sort of stayed nicely on my, it doesn't unwind too quickly, which is nice, so it's just kind of sitting on the back of my hand there. All right. Getting a little closer. And you can see just how much thread this is going to use, so you really see the value in getting the baby jewel loom. Also, it's great for travel. I love using the baby. All right. Let's see, that looks about 16. Let me just check real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. All right, so you should end, let's make sure I do that properly. You should end on the same side as your tail. So that's how you know you've done an even number. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my little snips here and cut that off, and I'm gonna wind it around a couple of times here, and then take my other tail, and I'm again just gonna tie a couple overhand knots just to keep that nice and taut. All right, there we go. All right, I did 3, just for a little security. All right, so now I'm just gonna, for getting it out of the way, I'm just gonna trim these a little bit so that they stay on the back. All right, so now we have our loom all set and ready to go. Just make sure that you have really good tension on all your warp threads there. And so now we're ready to start with our looming. So I'm gonna go ahead and open my package of needles here. Now what's great is you'll actually get 6 needles, which is why we're not giving them to you in the refill. So one of the benefits in doing a refill is that you can actually purchase one full kit and then the other color variations in the refills. And another great thing is that all of the kits will have the same amount of beads. So let's say you wanted to make this kit that we're doing here, but you wanted to utilize these colors. So you can do this kit and this pattern using these colors. So you can actually kind of mix and match and make your own. So it's a really great little tip if you're looking to buy one and then get the other refills. So you'll get the same number of beads. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna need my ruler for this, because you'll need about 5 feet, 6 feet if you wanna go for a little extra security there, but I'm just gonna kind of measure out about 5 feet here. I always wanna err on the side of safety. And we'll do a little bit more. All right, and I'm just gonna trim that off, and now we can set our thread aside. All right, so now I'm gonna just thread my needle. There we go, and pull it about halfway down or so. All right, So now I'm going to pull over my pattern here, and you're going to kind of see how this is going to start. All right, so you'll notice that there's a full row of color and a full row of color at the top and the bottom. These rows are actually going to fit into our slide ends, so our pattern doesn't actually start until one row in. So let me just kind of show you on my earring here what I mean. So when you're looking at the earring here, you see that you don't actually see the top and the bottom row because it sits inside of that ribbon crimp, or I'm sorry, that ribbon slide end right there. But we still need to do it in order to get our achieved look. So like I said, we have 15 beads going across. So I chose the blue to sort of go inside there. So I'm going to pick up 15 of my blue beads here. 4, 5, 6. All right, so let me just double check here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. All right, now you see how nice and long that loom needle is, and that's why you definitely want to use a proper loom needle for this. It'll make your life so much easier. All right, so we have our loom set up, and you can see, and I'll just kind of show you just so you have a little bit of a visual reference, where to sort of center the loom piece on the work here. So that way you kind of know it's about 1.5 inches from the top there. So what I'm going to do is just take that needle underneath all those warp threads there and sort of take my hand underneath and press up and make sure that those threads sit right in between all of those little beads there. So I'm going to keep my hand there and I'm going to pull my needle all the way through until I have about a tail of, I'd say, a good 8 inches or so. So you just want to kind of just judge your tail and just make sure, because you're going to need this to tie off at the very end. All right. And now going over, you're going to kind of press those beads up through, get your needle, make sure you're not catching any of those bottom threads there. And you're just going to go through one by one, catching all of those beads and just sort of loom it backwards and pull all the way through. All right, now you'll know if that worked if you remove your hand and all of your beads are still there. If you had some pop out and fall down, you just have to do it again because that just means that you went up and over, or I'm sorry, you went under one of the other threads. All right, so that is our first row, nice and tight there, and give it a little tug. You can just see I'm just sort of adjusting my tension. It's always easier to adjust it at the beginning. So what I'm going to do now is just follow along my pattern. And for my pattern here, I'm going to pick up 2 blue beads, 3 gold beads, and I have 5 blue beads, 5, 3 gold, and 2 more blue. All right, so the same thing. I'm just going to take that needle, go underneath, and sort of come down here and press it up, just making sure that all those threads kind of sit nice and tight in there. You can kind of scooch it up a little bit and pull it through. And I'm just going to kind of just with my finger there, just sort of push it up, just make sure it's nice and flush. And then the same, just going up and over all the way across. There we go. All right, and you're going to want to go slow. You don't want your thread to sort of tangle on you. All right, so that is the first 2 rows. I'm just going to continue on with the pattern, and you just pick up the 3rd row and then the 4th. Just keep that as the same technique. I'm going to meet you back here on the other side to show you how to finish off this loom piece. All right, so I've just completed the last row there. So now I'm going to add that row that goes underneath that ribbon slide again. So it's going to be 15 of our blue beads here. 4, 5. And just setting it underneath there. And you can see just how much thread I have. Now, like you saw earlier, I'm using 5.5 or so feet, but that is definitely more than enough for this. And the nice thing is because it is a smaller piece, you don't actually have to worry about tying it off halfway through. All right. All right, there we go. So now our loom part is done here. So what I'm going to show you now is the final tying off the threads. So I'm just going to orient my thread. Again, I'm a right-hander, so I'm just going to kind of flip it around that way. So I have this as my needle up here. All right, so it's coming out that top row there. So what I'm going to do is just turn my thread around and go into the first couple of beads there. I'm going to go in about 5 and poke my needle up and sort of bring it through and down. Now what I'm going to do with my needle is I'm going to go under that warp thread that's right there and kind of go up. And what I'm going to do is just create a nice little knot. So I have a loop here. I'm just going to take my needle and go through it and just create a little knot that's going to sit right on that little thread there. And you can see that I knocked some beads out of the way, but those will just kind of go right back in place. All right, so that's one knot, and I'm just going to move across and I'm going to do another knot there. And same thing, just catching that little thread underneath. Just something to sort of hitch that knot to. And I'm going to pull through again, making sure my knot is secure. Go through a couple more beads, don't go all the way to the end. So I'm just going to come out those gold beads there. All right, and now I'm just going to scooch my little guys right there. Take my little thread snips. This is why I like the thread snips. You can get nice and close and cut off that thread. All right, so now we're going to just remove our needle from that thread. And we're going to attach it to this side. And all we're going to do is just repeat that process. So this is why you want to have a good, nice long tail at the beginning there. So it's coming out that side. We're just going to go in a few beads here. And I'm just using those gold beads as a little bit of a guide for myself. There we go. And again, just going underneath there, catching that thread, going through the loop, and continuing on. Going under a few more there. And you can just kind of you can see I'm just sort of bending my little loom piece there. Again, we'll go under, catch that thread, come back, go through that loop, and then through a few more of those beads just to sort of make sure that it's nice and tucked away. All right, remove my needle there. Just going to kind of adjust my loom piece there to get nice and close. Take my snips. And we're done. All right. Well, we're done with this part. All right. So this is where your loom piece should be right now. It's all nice and secure and on your loom for you. So the next part here, what we're going to do is we're going to flip it over and we're going to cut it off of our loom here. So just sort of free it from the loom. And on this side, I'm just going to go through and just cut that off on both sides. All right. So now I'm just going to set that aside. All right, so if you've gotten this far, what you're going to do next is you're going to clear off, if you're using a bead mat here, we're going to need a hard surface to work on. So I'm going to do that and I'll be right back. All right, so the reason I'm working on a harder surface now is because I'm going to use these Post-it notes to help sort of secure my work to the table. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one side here and just kind of tape it down right there. All right, and for the next side here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take all of these little threads and we're gonna tie them in little knots here. So we're gonna go 2 at a time. So go ahead and separate 2. And again, this is why those little sticky notes are nice and helpful. So I'm just gonna kind of secure one side. That way it's nice and easy for you guys to see. All right, so I have these 2 threads and you can kind of see where they're coming out at the top. And all I'm going to do is just take and do 1 overhand knot and make sure it sits below there, and then do another overhand knot. And now I'm going to take these 2. I'm going to pull them off to the side here. I'm going to take the next 2 and do the same thing. So I'll show you one more and then I'll let you kind of do this on your own. All right. So again, I have 2 here. Going around. All right, so now I have my 4 over here. All right, so now you just continue on doing those 2 overhand knots and work your way all the way across. You'll have even numbers here, so that's why you're working in 2s. So I will see you just on the other side in just a moment. All right, so I'm just finishing off tying that last one there on the side. So let me kind of show you what I'm working with now. So if I can kind of pull this down here, you'll see that I have them all now. It's easier to see kind of going 2 by 2. So the next step here is to now take the ones that are in 2s and sort of knot those. Now this is just really helping to really secure your knots here at the end because you don't want your piece to fall apart. So this might seem tedious, but trust me, it is all worth it. All right, so now I'm gonna kind of set these apart so you can see. So what's happening there is I have 2 of the threads from each of those previous knots sort of separated there. And what I'm going to do is now, using each thread as one, I'm going to knot it just the same as I did that first time. Just keeping those separated, right, like so. All right, and you don't need to pull too tight. You don't want to sort of kink your loom work. So you're just going to do that double knot right there. So now you can see that we have a nice secure knot. All right, so do that with the rest, working all the way across, and then we will be back and I'll show you how to finish off the glue portion of this. All right, so what we're going to do now is, assuming I've done the same knotting on this side, you'll do it correctly on both sides, but I just wanted to kind of skip ahead and talk to you about doing the glue here. So for this, we're going to be using E6000. And just go ahead and unscrew it. And if you have a fresh E6000, you'll just sort of puncture it on the end there. And then go ahead and sort of spill it out onto your work surface. You see how little we're really using to do this. So that's why we don't give you an E6000 with those refill kits, because we know that you'll have plenty left over. All right, so now I'm going to use a toothpick. Like I said before, you can use a little scrap of wire. And again, I'm just going to get a little dab of glue on there. And I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to kind of drag it across those knots there. You don't want to get too much on your beads, but just enough on those knots to really help secure it. All right. And again, don't worry, because all this is going to kind of slide underneath that little ribbon slide end that we have there, so you don't need to add too much glue, but don't be shy. All right, there we go. All right, now if my other side was knotted, I'm going to do that at the same time. But now what we're going to do is we're going to let this sit for at least a few hours. I definitely recommend letting the E6000 dry for at least 24 hours before wearing, but to go on to the next step, I would definitely leave it just for a couple of hours. So go ahead and let it sit and then come on right back and I'll show you how to finish off the earring. We're almost done. All right, so we're gonna move on right now. I still have my loom piece here drying, so I'm just gonna leave that alone for a little bit, but we're gonna kind of move on to the next step here. So the next step is sort of creating the finishing techniques for our earrings. So we're gonna start by taking one of our head pins here, and we're gonna string on one of those bicone crystals. And then what we're gonna do is string on our bead with the large size down. That's our beautiful Swarovski crystal Baroque bead. And then we're going to string on one more of those bicone beads. Now the bicones just help sort of stabilize that, so you want to kind of just make sure that they're all nice and nestled in there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our round nose pliers and we're just going to make a simple wire loop by just sort of bending our wire back a little bit and then wrapping it up and over the top, moving our pliers and just wrapping it around the side, just like so. We're going to remove our pliers and then take our flush cutters and just trim off that excess wire. So we'll just set that little part aside. All right, now I'm just going to kind of take my chain nose pliers there and adjust a little bit. But now we can go ahead and set that guy right down there for just a few minutes. Now we're going to take our eye pin here, slide on one bicone, and what we're going to do is we're going to do that same simple wire loop, but what you want to notice here is that loop right there is flat, so we need to create something that is going perpendicular, so it's going to go the opposite direction there. So if you can kind of see from the side here, I'm going to put it into my pliers just like so and bend back a little bit and then wrap it over the top. So now you'll see that I have those loops going in opposite directions. And this will just help orient that earring so that it sits nicely when you're wearing it. All right, I'm going to set that down. All right, so now we're ready to go on and sort of bring our loom piece over here. So I've let him dry for a little while there. And I'm going to take my snips and just cut off the tails there. Now I'm cutting close to those knots. You don't want to cut too close, but don't worry about leaving a little extra. All of this will sort of fit into your ribbon crimps there. And set those aside. And we're just going to repeat on the other side there. All right. I'm going to bring my little pad back here. I'm going to take some of that glue there and I'm going to place it onto my surface. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of those ribbon crimps there. You can see that one side is already opened for you. I'm just going to kind of drag my toothpick through there because what I want to do is just kind of go inside and just sort of swirl it around and just get a little bit of glue happening on the inside there, just for that little extra security. All right, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my loom and slide that last row of beads right down into that slide end. Just like so. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my chain nose pliers here, give it a little kink there, and then to sort of finish it off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press it up against my work surface. So just sort of gently press it down. That'll give you a nice little leverage to close that. And I'm actually just going to make sure that other side is nice and closed as well. All right, so all we're going to do is we're going to repeat that on the other side here. So I'll get to show you again. So again, just get a little bit of glue there, and you can see just how little I'm using. It's just for that little added security when you put it into your ribbon crimp there. All right, just sort of scrape the inside there. And now the same thing again. You can see how that last row of blue beads is just sort of disappearing into that ribbon. But now you can also see why we want to do all those knots there, just to really give it that security. All right, and again, same thing. We're just gonna sort of bend that down just ever so slightly and secure it. And I'm just pressing it down, just sort of on my table there. All right, so now we have our piece ready to go. And now we're just gonna finish it off. All right, so go ahead and take your first piece here, and I find it easier to use those chain nose pliers, and you're just going to open it like a jump ring, slip on that little loop to the bottom, and then close that up, just like so. And now we're going to move on to the top there. I'm going to take that loop that we created, and we're just going to open it a little bit more, just for ease. Slip it onto that loop, close that up, there we go. And now the last little part is we're going to take our big beautiful ear wire and we're just going to, again, just give it a little gentle twist, just kind of opening it up, slip on our eye pin and closing up that loop, nice and secure. And there you have one earring. Now, of course, logically, you'll just repeat all of these steps to do the second earring. However, what you can do is while your loom piece is drying, you can also go on to the second loom piece. That way you kind of complete it all at the same time. But I just wanted to do one full one here so that you understood exactly how to make these beautiful loom statement earrings. Now be sure to get the refills if you love this kit, and you'll already have your loom and your glue and your needles, so it's a wonderful kit to buy and then buy the refill kits. And of course, everything you see here, including all the tools I used, are available at beadaholique.com. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button below to get the latest from Beadaholique.